The next speaker that we have, he is the Chief Revenue Officer at Sana Commerce, where he leads the Global Demand Center. And over more than 7 years at Sana, he has led the company's upmarket journey from the ground up, building enterprise revenue from 0 to roughly 30% of total ARR, growing average deal size by more than 4 times, and learning most of the hard lessons along the way. And he's here now to share them with us. So please welcome Tim van de Hattem.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for that intro. Hello, good afternoon, Malmö, and welcome to this presentation, this session. Size does matter. I'm not sure whether this is a universal truth, but I'm sure as hell that it's true for moving up market with an enterprise GTM. I'll share today 5 lessons I learned while building enterprise GTM for Sana Commerce from scratch. This sentence, it's on our radar, but we have other priorities, is a sentence that someone said to me in 2020 when we had a great conversation with a prospect. This was one of the first times we were actively trying to speak to larger accounts. And one of the executives at that account said this very sentence to me. And it genuinely defined the next 5 years of my career. That sentence stuck with me, and it has always stuck with me since. But right after that, this became a quest for myself, a personal quest to uncover how can we make sure that we change their priorities? Or should we? A little bit about the journey that we have been on since. When I joined Sana Commerce just over 7 years ago, the average monthly recurring revenue set at 1,200 euros. Today, the average MRR is 5.5K. So we more than 4x'd, indeed, just like was said in the intro, we more than 4x'd our average MRR. An enterprise deal today sits at between 10 and 25K, which again was unheard of when I joined. We have some outliers above 50K. Bear in mind, we sell more or less the same product, more or less the same platform, to more or less the same market, but with an entirely different GTM. Enterprise is a different sport. And what I mean by that is you should consider it an entirely different game than your SMB or your mid-market go-to-market. I oftentimes compare it with going to the gym or working out or fitness or whatever you want to call it. Many of us go to the gym or work out, but also many of us have a very different objective when they do. Some work out to lose weight, others work out to gain weight, others work out to recover from an injury. The game is pretty much the same. We go to the same place, we move, we work out, we lift weights, but the objective is very different. So we all go about it very different. And that's the exact same thing when changing your go-to-market from small to medium-sized businesses to an enterprise go-to-market. Because if you just increase your pricing and sell to bigger accounts, you didn't really go up market. You just started to change more and try to sell to customers who probably don't see the value of what you are trying to sell them and end up being frustrated. Because the SMB playbook breaks in enterprise. The sales cycles are very, very different, much longer, for instance. To give you an example, at Sana Commerce, the average sales cycle for an SMB deal or an opportunity would be somewhere between 3 to 6 months. For an enterprise deal, on the other hand, the sales cycle is somewhere between 9 to 18 months. That significantly impacts your CAC, your customer acquisition costs. It's longer, but it's also led and driven by many more players on both your customer side as well as on your own side. The best SMB sellers at Sana, back when we moved up to enterprise, were struggling to get into the swing of things. Because an enterprise deal doesn't necessarily require an amazing salesperson. It requires a conductor, someone who's able to conduct the entire orchestra, someone who's able to make sure everyone on the deal team pulls their weight when it's their time to do so. Whether that's your pre-sales engineering team, whether that's your legal team, whether that's your marketing team. Everyone should be working together, and the salesperson is the conductor more than the superhero. On the buyer side of things, you have many more stakeholders. And all those stakeholders, just like those people that went to the gym, have their own agendas and have their own priorities and have their own challenges. Think of selling to an SMB where the general manager or the managing director may be one of the only, or one of the, as a minimum, the most important stakeholder and decision maker. And you may be able to convince that individual. Compare that to a decision-making unit of 8 to 10 people that have very different priorities. That requires very different skill sets on your end of the deal team as well. And higher ACVs sound like the promised land to many people in go-to-market and many people in revenue, but it also comes with a higher cost of making mistakes. Being all in on large opportunities, spending lots of time, spending lots of marketing budget to then end up losing an opportunity is much, much higher risk than in SMB when the volume is much higher and the risk for an individual opportunity is much lower. So what we did at Sana Commerce, back when we did, more than 6 years ago, is we built a separate entity. We built an entirely separate team. A team with people who understood how to sell and market to enterprise. AEs, CSMs, marketing, ABM team, and the best pre-sales engineer we had. That was the one individual that we took from the team that we already had. The lesson here is to not upgrade your old playbook or iterate on what you already have, but really build a new playbook and genuinely build a new motion. Lesson number 2, stop trying to convince the market to move. This ties back to the quote that I shared at the beginning of this talk about having different opportunities. For enterprise go-to-market, the game is much more about being there when they move, rather than trying to convince your buyers to move now. My old thinking was, or our old thinking at Sana Commerce was, if we reach them enough times, at some point they'll prioritize e-commerce. For those who don't know Sana Commerce offers a B2B e-commerce platform. If you reach them enough times, we'll be able to convince them that the moment is now. We'll be able to convince them that they'll be missing out if they don't move now. That was the old playbook. That was the old thinking. But after that quote, and after chewing on that for quite a while, I have to say, I came to the realization that our influence on that prospect's internal roadmap is fairly minimal. It's much more important to understand when they will be moving and make sure that you are there when they do. I came across this quote on LinkedIn from Felipe Romero last week or the week before, and that kind of sums it up. So if your enterprise outbound is not working, it's not necessarily broken, but probably your timing is. I thought that summed it up quite well. So what do I mean by old outbound, and how did we do old outbound? We used static lists, so we just had our lists of our total addressable market or our target account lists. We used generic, automated, yes, but fairly generic sequences, personalized to an extent, but it was mostly about volume. It was mostly about filling that pipeline with as many opportunities as possible, because we would be able to convince those buyers to sway and to convince them that the timing was right now. The risk here, if you apply the same playbook to enterprise go-to-market, is that you burn through your TAM super fast. Because where you could have 50K accounts to address in your small business go-to-market, you may only have 500 for your end. There's always less, significantly less typically. And every poisoned relationship matters, because if you've touched an account and you did not manage to progress, you did not manage to get engagement, then you can't touch that account for a little while. The benefit here is obviously that enterprise has a bigger stakeholder group, as I just mentioned, so you could multi-thread and try to get engagement with different stakeholders, but once it's poisoned, you can't touch it for a while. So what we did is we went from list to signals. A signal is, well, this is a fairly complex definition, but it's actually a window of opportunity. So it's a means of trying to understand when is this timing. I'll get into what that could look like in a little bit. And that's what we made the central focus of our go-to-market. Rather than lists, rather than who to outreach to, we focused on when to outreach to who. We had the same ICP. We had more or less the same messaging, but when the timing changed, the outcome changed significantly as well. So if you're still using lists today in enterprise GTM, you're probably not early, you're probably irrelevant. Because 80% of B2B buyers say that automated outreach they receive is completely irrelevant. And I'm sure many of you here in the room today get those emails. And if I look at the emails that I get myself, I delete 99% of it, but not when the timing is right. When the timing is right, I'm probably reading that email or whatever other outreach that we have. That was lesson number 2. On to lesson number 3. Fix account blindness before you fix your sequences. I talked about signals just yet. And most teams don't see the signals right in front of them. We struggled with that too. We understood that timing was of the essence, but we didn't necessarily understood how do I know when that timing is right. There are signals everywhere, all the time. But often we're missing them. And it's not because those signals don't exist, but it's because because of the sheer fact that they are everywhere. They're in different systems, different databases, different people's heads. So this is what we did. We fixed that in 5 steps. One is we standardized. So we defined account research and enrichment criteria across the entire team. So no more individual enrichment, no more individual interpretation of what does it mean to prepare to outreach to an account. We standardized it, and remember, this was before AI. Now we're able to do this much faster and at much bigger scale, and we are. But then standardizing was already a big step. Then signals, and this is maybe the most difficult part. So understand what your buyer's signals are. And I'm going to give you one very practical example. Sana sells their software mostly to large manufacturers or OEMs. And those companies tend to go to large industry events that happen every 2 or 3 years. And what we found when visiting those events is that those companies more and more not only want to showcase their newest equipment and their latest whatever tractors or whatever they make, but they also want to show off how digital they've become and how they are enabling their customers to buy online and to have an online experience with them. So companies that go to such events, clearly for us that's a signal that well before the event takes place, they are probably going to investigate how to bring their sales online or how to optimize. One signal is not a trigger. So not everyone at an event, for instance, will be in the market at that very moment in time. It's a combination of the cocktail of the different signals that form a trigger. So analyze your closed-won deals to understand which combination of signals makes typically your account to go to market. This used to be super complicated. It's become, well, I wouldn't say super easy, but it's become much easier lately. Obviously, all sales calls, well, obviously, at least for us, obviously all sales calls are recorded. We have all the transcripts, all the emails, all the CRM notes, all the marketing intelligence. So we can combine all that and try to understand whether we can make some sense out of it, whether there's any commonalities between those accounts that we have won. Any commonalities between the behavior they displayed, the signals that we saw before they started to actively engage with us. Make sure you have an owner, someone that orchestrates the whole program, that owns the whole program. It doesn't necessarily have to be, well, rather not a person that does all the work, but someone that really owns the entire program. And last but not least, have playbooks that match the response to the signal intent. So for every combination of trigger intents, I should say, for every combination of signals, make sure that that outreach is not only personalized, but is also relevant to the signals that you've seen. So if you found the right timing, then it's just a matter of conversion, and that's easy, right? No, it's not. That's a whole different ballgame. But the timing, if you have the timing right in enterprise GTM, it gives you a seat at the table, and that's when you can actually start selling. Lesson number 4, and this is a hard one. This has been a hard one for us. Don't go up market before your product does. And that's what we did, in all honesty. We moved up market before our product was enterprise grade. When we saw an opportunity to sell to larger accounts and to understand what their reasons were, we went GTM first and product second. And that was a mistake. So don't do that. Make sure that your product readiness and your go-to-market, up-market motion are in lockstep and are in sync. Because if you don't, your customers will always have different expectations, particularly from a security and performance standpoint. Pretty much across the board, they'll have different expectations. The second one is that you'll be behind your roadmap even before you've even started. So if you start with go-to-market and have product playing catch-up all the time, you'll never get to be ahead of the curve. And competing before you're ready doesn't build character, it builds injuries. And before you know, go-to-market becomes apologize. And again, I have had to apologize every once in a while in the beginning. Lesson number 5, the last lesson, own the signals or nobody will. Technology doesn't fix account blindness. AI doesn't fix account blindness either. Ultimately, people do. A team or an owner has to bring all of this together. Every team saw a piece, and if nobody owns the bigger picture, it still won't work. It still be scattered signals, it will still be not one unified motion. So what we did is, we have one person in the organization owning that entire motion, owning that entire program, that entire process, from data quality to the cross-functional sharing across the different disciplines within revenue and GTM. Because if you rely too much on technology, if you rely too much on the AI alone, it still won't fly. And when signals, timing, and ownership align, that's genuinely when enterprise GTM stops being a volume game and starts to be a precision game. To wrap this up, 5 lessons. Enterprise is a different sport. Realize that. Build a different machine. The second one, stop convincing that the timing is now, but start optimizing your timing. Number 3, fix the account blindness. Figure out what your signals are and how to capture those. Number 4, don't go up market before your product does. Maybe that should be number 1. And number 5, own the signals. Have a single accountable person, or otherwise no one will own the signals and they will be all over the place. So again, I don't know whether this is a universal truth, but again, for enterprise GTM, size absolutely matters. So there's patience and discipline and all the work that nobody sees. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so glad we finally settled that size does matter. So thank you, Tim, for that, for coming to Sweden to figure that out. Listen, I just had one quick question because we ran out of time. But I read somewhere that you tend to apply your engineering mindset to whatever it is you do, whether you're in boxing or you're doing something with your hands or with the family or whatever it is, with writing code.
It's true.
What is the winning concept with this engineering mindset?
I'm not sure if it's a winning concept, but it's just how I'm hardwired. Well, maybe odd for a revenue leader, but I am originally an engineer. I'm an engineer by trade. So I tend to apply all this to whatever I do, whether it's DIYing or whether it's vibe coding or whether it's building an enterprise go-to-market. That's how I tend to look at things.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.